do this thing. What's up, guys? Devin here with Backcountry Exposure. I feel like it's been a little while since I've done like a good discussion type of video, so I thought, why not talk about some of the key components, considerations for planning a trip. Now guys, be aware that this is strictly my opinion. It's my thoughts on how I personally like to plan trips. Your method and your approach to it is going to be a little bit different, and that's fine. But hopefully this can create some kind of good dialogue between you and I about how you might plan a trip. Now I think the first thing that is most important to discuss when planning a trip is figuring out your destination, and then all of the elements and considerations that fall into play based off of that destination. Now here in Utah, the varied landscape is going to change a lot of those considerations, and so I know that living back east, it might be different, or if you live somewhere else around the world, Canada, Mexico, somewhere in Europe, it's going to be different. But for me here in my location, there are a lot of different considerations that come into play when you choose a destination. So for example, it's fall right now, it's October, and getting up into the mountains where it's already snowed a foot plus, it's not really somewhere that I can choose to go. So I'm looking at the desert as an option and headed out this weekend into the desert. So the reason that I picked up this tent is I wanted to try a new one-person freestanding tent. And so I picked this up because where I'm going is probably going to have pretty difficult pitches for any kind of shelter that is a non-freestanding shelter. So I'm excited to try this out, but let's really dive back into the basics of choosing a destination. Your key components, key considerations when it comes to choosing your destination is what gets you excited. Like, are there places that you have not seen before that you would like to go visit? How much time do you have? And what kind of mileage do you want to do? What kind of things do you want to see? Do I want to be in the water? Do I want to see a lot of like waterfalls or arches, or just be in really dense forest and have a different kind of experience depending on the things that I want to see? So choosing your destination is just figuring out what gets you excited. Why do you want to go out? Is it a weekend trip? Is it a week-long trip? There's so many things to consider when choosing a destination. But when you're choosing a destination, make sure that it's something that fits within your backpacking skill level. Don't go do something that is going to put you in a scenario that could get you in trouble, cause or pose safety risks and that kind of thing. We're going to talk about risk assessment here in a minute, because that's another one of these 4 considerations. But destination, probably the most important thing to choose, because that dictates how you plan everything else. The next thing that I do when I am planning a trip after I've chosen my destination is I do a lot of map research. I will find the necessary maps, typically just a USGS topo map, to be able to decide the kind of route that I want to approach with this. And then I will consult the internet, Google, and try to find other people that have done that particular route. And so using a map to be able to understand your destination after you've chosen it will give you a really good indication of the type of trip that you're looking at. Now it's really important to research a map, understand your map, because that becomes a safety net for you. Being able to orient yourself, know where you're at, and be able to understand that route, how many miles you're going to do, potential campsites, and even going a little bit further, are there places that have requirements to camp in specific designated campsites, or do you have dispersed camping available? In the national parks, typically you have backcountry campsites that you have to reserve, and that's where you're required to camp. Others don't have that, but if you can just disperse camp, then it doesn't really matter where you go. But what does matter is that you understand the terrain, you understand the topography of that area, so that if you got into trouble, you would be able to orient yourself and just be able to understand how many miles you're moving at a time each day that you're out. Now the third item, guys, is going to be risk assessment. When I'm choosing my destination, I have now researched the map and I have a good understanding of the route. I need to look at potential risks. And so there are a lot of different things that you can do when you're assessing the risk. And this comes down to, gosh, so many different types of categories that you have to be really mindful of. Does this route fit the style of the group that I'm going with? Do the people that are going with me, are they going to be able to do this route safely? Do they have the skills to be able to accomplish that? If I'm going solo, are there things about being out there solo that put me in a little bit more vulnerable state? So you have to really think about risk. This isn't like fear mongering in any way. This is just being realistic to, I'm going out into the backcountry. I don't have cell service and I need to be able to know what those inherent risks are so that if I do get into trouble, I have a plan, a risk assessment plan to be able to get myself out of that. So for example, when I take my university students out in the backcountry, I am thinking of all sorts of things like the phone number for search and rescue, the phone number for the sheriff's department, and emergency contact phone numbers. I have information available on me to be able to contact resources as necessary, especially if I'm carrying some kind of satellite communication device, whether it's an inReach or a satellite phone or a spot, those kinds of things. And so really paying attention to things that could get you in trouble. Do you have a backup plan? Do you have contingency plans to be able to make this a good, successful, and safe trip for yourself? Again, guys, this is not fear mongering. This is just being realistic to the fact that you're going out into a vulnerable place that could get you in danger. And if you're not prepared, you could get yourself really hurt and into a lot of trouble. So now, guys, the fourth item is going to be gear assessment. I think it's really important to have a lot of good options for gear, that with your personal gear, I don't only have one tent, I don't only have one sleeping bag, I don't only have one sleeping pad, I don't only have one stove, etc., etc. I have multiple options to be able to facilitate different seasons as well as different destinations. And so, for example, like I mentioned before, I really wanted to take a pyramid tent that I've got into the desert this coming weekend, but that's just not really a feasible thing because we're likely to sleep on slick rock and set up on slick rock with these campsites that we have planned. And so taking a freestanding tent like this is going to be the better option. And so understanding, again, going back to risk as well as knowing your destination and map research is, do I know the campsites that I'm going to be at and what kind of restrictions might there be? Some places you can't hang a hammock, like that's a real thing, as well as some places there's just not trees to hang a hammock, and so I can't bring a hammock in that case. And so it's just important to assess your gear, look at what you have, and does the gear that I'm planning to take to the destination that I have planned allow me to facilitate this type of trip, have a good time, be comfortable and safe. It's all of those things, really, really important. So guys, I know that that is like really simple information. It should be like common knowledge and things that you think about, but if you're new to backpacking, knowing how to plan a trip and do it the right way that fits your style is really, really important. Like imagine the amount of work and planning and stuff that goes into planning a section hike or planning a through hike. Plan through hiking the PCT or the Appalachian Trail or the Colorado Trail, all of those longer distance trails, there's an amazing amount of planning that goes into doing that. Not only in how am I going to resupply and that kind of thing, but does the gear really fit what I'm trying to accomplish? And think of that same kind of planning going into just a weekend or even an overnight. It might seem a little excessive, and it might be, but it's important to be, I don't think it's a problem to be over-prepared, if I'm being honest. And if you're over-prepared, that just means that you are ready for whatever is going to be thrown at you. You might have weather change that just happens like that, and that's fine. But are you prepared for that weather change? So anyway, guys, that's my 4 key considerations for planning a backpacking trip. Interested to know what things you might add to this, things that you disagree with. I would love to have that dialogue. So jump down in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts on this discussion. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Please support me on Patreon if you are open to that concept. I've got my Patreon link down in the description. Hit that subscribe button as well as that little bell ringy thing to be able to get notifications of when a new video comes out, as well as always, have an awesome day, guys. We'll see you later.